see if I can articulate some thoughts around the lie that I think many of us have been sold, that there is something wrong with getting angry. Obviously, not saying that a lot of the things that people choose to do while they are in a, what I would call, immature relationship with the energy, the emotion, the message, and the purpose of anger. And a lot of our, history, individual and collective, paints a grim picture of the results of letting anger control you. And so the mind, being something that operates in a binary mode, it's either yes or no. I'm either going left or I've got to go right. So if I don't want to let anger control me, I better not get angry. And that is a strategy that works to an extent and in a certain spectrum of context. The limitation of that strategy is anger has a healthy and natural purpose, right? I would assume that a lot of whoever ends up watching this, the 3 to 10 people that ever see my videos usually, have some sense, if not a lot of sense, of the importance and purpose of anger. It's been cool to watch over the last 20 years, and maybe it's just because I've grown into an older person, but it seems like culture in general is becoming a lot more emotionally intelligent and wise, thanks to a lot of amazing people sharing things on the internet. So I'm trying to do my piece of that here. So okay, let's see what I want to say. The purpose of anger, I think, just like most basic, is protection of boundaries. So if my individual garden of self, my sphere of internal experience is being violated, my experience of free will is being pressed upon in a way that I do not consent to, and that is not healthy for my well-being, then I think there's like a hierarchy of escalations. And after a certain point of tolerance being taken advantage of, anger comes out to communicate in a much more powerful way. No, right? This is me, this is my zone, get out. And so the mistake being when we try to push our zone out into other zones in like an overcompensatory attempt at protection that wants to extend into the future and into possibilities and what have you. The ego wants to expand beyond itself and consume everything to protect itself, to become so big there's nothing bigger than it that can be greater and more dangerous or more whatever it may be, right? And so again, the mind goes, oh, I'm supposed to not push against this, because we'll try to be like, no, and then we'll do it too much, or we'll see others do it too much, and we go, okay, that doesn't seem right. So I'll go in, I'll go, oh no, it's okay. I'm gonna be agreeable, we'll avoid conflict, we will avoid anger, and thus avoid harm. And this is like, again, the inverse duality, binary way that our mind, ego thing function works, which goes, okay, then I must become so small that there are no borders to protect, to trigger me. I must become nothing, no one, anatta, no self. It's all love. We're all one. And of course, I've had these experiences in meditation, on mushrooms, in nature. I listened to somebody speak and it made sense. And so I agree with them intellectually. I've had these experiences. cool, I'll disappear and become transparent. And it's like, okay, first of all, by the logic of everything that talks about the idea of no self, there is inherent in that the requirement to acknowledge that there never was a self. And so to act in a way that says I must reduce myself to nothing is implying there was a self with such conviction that it sustains that illusion just as well, if not better, than almost anything else. And number two, there's kind of two domains here that get mixed up a lot, and I think that creates confusion. I mean, it has for me, and I've made a lot of mistakes because of it. And so there's this like truth with a capital T. Reality is. That's all you could really say. Everything else is kind of like our entertainment in the form of poetry about it, building a mental map made of words and symbols to try to reconcile the way our minds work with where our minds come from and help produce a bridge of understanding of how we can be in this apparent contradiction of oneness and no self, while there appears to be distinct things and many selves existing in and as those distinct things. And I like, the dream metaphor gets used a lot. This is like a dream, it's dreamlike, in that it shares a lot of those qualities that we get in a dream. What do I want to say about that? The you that exists in a dream, does it exist right now? Kind of. Your awareness goes into the dream and it watches a dream character, be it in a dream experience, and then it all ends, and then none of it matters because the entire context, including the self-being, was a fabrication of some sort, and the awareness that was present to populate the perspective isn't a tangible object. It can't be categorized within any of our sense functions or any of our word symbols. Nothing said can really represent that most fundamental thing that all of us are, and can very obviously see, like, okay, yes, obviously the deepest layer of me that I can know is that which is knowing everything else. And so I sort of don't know it in the same way as I know what I'm looking at with my eyes, because I can be aware of what my eyes are picking up through the objects in my field of vision. And this is more of a simultaneous knowing of inference of like, okay, the fact that there is an awareness of things means that there is some being aware of things in a way. And I can also notice through, and this might be maybe like less immediately obvious, but just like the sense of like, I exist. Here I am being. I don't know. As that. And that clarity, that luminous, aware presence is touching everything, everywhere, effortlessly in experience. So, wow, I really got off track here. So, anger, right? Obviously, awareness and anger, the only relationship per se that they have with each other is that awareness is aware of anger. And I'm using awareness as a noun, and I'm giving it a name. That doesn't necessarily mean it's an object like my arm is, right? Arm, awareness. We can't put our fingers on awareness in that same way. So, asterisk there. I feel like it's worth noting. So, anger arises, right, in the dream experience, the dream-like experience, where things are distinct and different and in motion, apparently. And so there is a story unfolding of all of those things. And in like the game of spiritual growth, there is sort of the maturation of how this individualistic vehicle of consciousness, let's call it, comes to relate to the consciousness that you could say is like almost like it's flowing through it, or like saturating the entire experience produced by our brain's hallucination of all of the input coming in our senses, right? God, it's like, it's so funny because I feel like it's necessary to give all of this context to then just say, it's okay to be an individual with boundaries regardless of these other concepts related to the alleged, the supposed, the theorized absolute nature of reality and self. No self, whatever. Labels don't really work when you're looking at the totality of your experience in that way. Because, well, I'll stop there. So I hope that all of that I just said mattered to someone, because it was a lot. Because the thing that I really want to talk about is how we are sold this lie that we shouldn't get angry. And I think that's such insanity and bullshit that a normal, natural, organic response shouldn't happen, as if there was something flawed in the design of nature. Not to say that nature isn't messy or painful or anything else that it is. It's just that everything in nature has a purpose. It cannot survive if it doesn't serve a function. The pet animals everywhere, that wouldn't survive in the wild, they are surviving in the wild. They're surviving better than anything else in the wild except for us, because they are in the heart of the part of the wild that has become the dominant species on the planet, us. And they've in some way either learned or been forced into a relationship with us where they provide us huge emotional value. And so they have a purpose, right? Everything. If it doesn't, I feel like it will over time cease to exist and phase out. And maybe that's happening with things like anger, and maybe it can happen if we learn how to feel like, where does my current expression of individuality begin and end, and what does it mean for that to be respected or violated, and how do I communicate my feelings about that and desires when something needs to be communicated. And I think if a person can do that and have the capacity to feel intensity enough to always be able to do that, which I feel like is really like, this is what self-love is, or one of the important dimensions of it. I don't think you'll get angry at nearly anything until you come across a situation where you see somebody who is on the receiving end of that kind of abuse. And then your sense of self is so well established in this individual vehicle that you have the capacity to expand it into other people without becoming a malnourished martyr who isn't taking care of themselves. Because you've done that, you can see injustice, and you're able to approach it well, because you know that if it should turn towards you, you know how to handle it. And so you can expand to include the rest of the world. And again, that anger creates the energy and the fire and the force to do something about those situations, if it makes sense to you. I know there's good arguments for pacifism and other things, so that might be a better approach. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. But at least to stop trying to go left or right only into I get angry or I don't get angry, and instead anger arises. Why? What is trying to protect itself? Why am I feeling angry? What's the agenda here? And is there a way for me to change my response to the situations that are triggering that anger so that I do feel protected and respected? I am respecting myself, protecting my territory in a way that is healthy. Like, I can be angry and peaceful, right? And I think that's the trick. Very middle way. And with all of that, I think that we have a lot of suppressed anger. There's a lot of pent-up anger because there's so much abuse and oppression, and there's so much that we've done for the sake of being polite and agreeable and trying to find safety or not knowing what to do. And so we allowed that abuse to happen, or we abused others, and we have grief and shame and rage and all of these things that we've pushed down metaphorically and literally. And if you don't think that you're one of those people, I would love to hear why, because I don't think that can be true. And I would like to challenge you on that. Or let you challenge yourself. Or if you really genuinely don't, that could be really cool to hear what that's like. And so with all of that suppressed anger, and we say, oh, I'm not an angry person. That's not who I am. I am peaceful. I am kind. I don't like conflict. I'm agreeable. We are divorcing ourselves from our inner archetype that embodies most of our power, our ability to get things done and help others get things done, things that are right. And if we can't act on our sense of what is right and wrong, then we have to become numb to that sense of what is right and wrong. And so we become maybe naive and ignorant pacifists who are living a delusion of, I must not act. And that delusion is protecting us from the reality that I feel like I cannot act. And so if I cannot hear that signal, I better shut it off in some way so that I don't go mad. So the over-identification with this like one side of I'm only this, I'm not that, is a split of self. It creates an unconscious, inherent, chronic inner resistance and a conditional approach to life and self-expression. And that, that is, I think, that's how ego works. That's what ego is, the kind of ego that we're trying to dissolve. It's not real. It is a false division through our ignorance that causes us to mistakenly say, I'm this, not that. The reality is I'm all of it, and I don't really know exactly what any of it is. And also, in this other way, I'm not any of it, because it's all kind of flowing through me or in and out of me, and it's just a rising and passing phenomena within something that's not even really there. It's, it's kind of beyond the idea of there, not there. So, there's this inner division, this attempt at division. It's like when you press your hands together, it feels like there's a dividing line of pressure, of force, but it's actually where your hands are connecting, but just in a way that's in resistance to each other. And so it feels like they're in opposition to each other, and if they're in opposition to each other, they must be separate. So, let yourself get angry, let yourself feel the anger. Hopefully you can breathe and slow down enough and have enough presence and humility or whatever it is that you need to not let it take you for a ride, and reflect on what's going on there. I think that is sort of the essence of shadow work. So journaling has helped me a lot to find that clarity, because it's kind of hard sometimes when you're just like in your head with the experience and you can't externalize it at all. And so in doing all of this, in allowing yourself to go, yes, when anger arises, that's natural, that's fine, that's me. Hopefully I can express it in a healthy, wholesome way, and I can learn how to do that. We all can. Then we become safe for anger, and anger feels safe to us. We don't collapse or run away or freak out. when anger is happening in front of us or around us. And when we feel anger, we don't get like a second trigger about that anger and lose control. And then we can sort of wield it for its intended purpose, which is to go, no, this is my boundary. These are my standards. Let's talk about it. And if talking doesn't work, I am not afraid to escalate. And I will do what I have to do as far as I deem appropriate to do what I think needs to get done. And maybe we have a limit and it's like, fine, you can kill me because I can't participate in this, or I'll run away, or whatever it may be. But I think that we all have a higher willingness for that kind of escalation than we think, and a lower tolerance for behaviors that will cause us to escalate into more powerful ways of communicating and establishing our boundaries. And also the energy of embodiment of that, I think, makes it very easy for those situations to not have to escalate. It's like the saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than it is to be a gardener in a war. Most really highly trained and accomplished fighters are the most peaceful people, and the ones that are not are very quickly cut down by life. And you know, there's exceptions to everything, I guess, but I also think everything kind of balances out eventually. And these are the sort of like balancing principles that we see in action with the human condition. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to say. So, thank you if you watched this. Let me know what you think.